Check. Oh, here we are. We're live. Okay, so this morning, um, we are rocking and rolling forward. Kind of hit a crossroads yesterday where I actually have been reading. I gotta grab the book. Pretty neat book. Filmation Generation. So it's about the Filmation animation studio, which was basically the also ran in the world of Saturday morning cartoons back in like the 60s and 70s and into the 80s. They had about a 25-year run before they had to close their doors. Headed up by a guy named Lou Shermer. Seems like a real nice guy, good guy, beloved guy. Not sure if he's still alive. If he is, he's probably mid-80s. So, anyway, but really made me think about the brickwork of animation and how important it is to just, get past. We're learning how to do what we're doing and learning our workflow, and now it's time to start thinking about the business of this. And step one is to set some deadlines. So I'm setting the deadline of 60 days from yesterday to have an episode. Now that may be an aggressive or optimistic goal. I'm not really sure, and frankly, I don't care. What I do care about is that it's time to just really hunker down and start rocking on this thing. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm just knocking out shots. Now, the interesting thing about the shot I'm working on here is that instead of actually quick explanation, this shot is being done very much the Open Toons way. So we've got ink layers, paint layers, shadow layers, blah, 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 blah. But for various reasons I will not get into, what I did was I had taken this animatic, which had been inked and colored, and I went ahead and rendered this out some time ago as a image sequence, which effectively, if you bring it back into OpenToons, effectively turns it into a plain old raster layer, which is why I'm having to do this erasing right now, because the shadow is not being masked because the shadow is baked into the drawing itself. So that's kind of stupid, kind of a dumb problem to have, but not a big deal. So this is kind of a whole different approach, and I think going forward, as I pencil test new scenes, I've sort of learned some lessons that will modify the workflow a little bit, so that I think going forward, I'm painted into a corner a little bit on this sequence, but it's not a big enough deal to go back and have to redo a bunch of stuff. I don't know if that makes sense, but so what's interesting about it to me is, again, because this is a plain old raster level, everything's baked together, which I kind of actually like that as a sort of a workflow idiom, in the sense that I like to keep things as baked down as possible most of the time, I would say. So yeah, all I'm doing here is just making a simple sizing adjustment, like so. And I'm actually going to put that there, and then see if I can sneak that right up there. And then I'm just going to overlay the mouth. Since I am going to overlay the mouth, I think it probably makes sense to, let's do it this way. Let's copy this, because I'm going to want that. And then I'm going to hit the B key, and I wonder if I can paste this into what is now obviously a Toons raster level from a plain old raster level. Nope, can't do it. Okay, so that's fine. I don't care. I'm going to stick with, for the lip sync, I'm going to stick with plain old raster levels. I don't care. So we'll just go click, click, boom, boom. Okay, and if I'm not mistaken, yes, there's the bottom of his mouth. So let's go ahead and erase that. And now what I'm going to do is take my venerable oil paint brush, which I tend to use a lot when I'm doing painting kind of stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit the R key to sample here and then just paint this out. Okay. Now, here I'm actually going to use my pencil and do kind of the same thing. Because this is a raster level, there's no such thing as a fill. So that's what makes this workflow, as I was sort of alluding to, that's what makes this workflow kind of interesting. Because I think it's a good way to work, and if I was doing animation, say, in Krita, this is pretty much how I would do it. I would always try to keep the animation as baked down as possible. And I think actually in this level, I need to snap that back to a -1-ish. Okay. So I'd always be thinking in terms of keeping things as flat as possible. I don't want umpteen quadzillion layers of stuff. I want as few as possible. And then I'm going to animate as little as possible. In this case, it's going to be really two things. It's going to be the lip sync and then maybe a little bit of secondary animation, which I can always do, like, you know, with the plastic tool, for example. So, but yeah. Honestly, the touch-ups, like I'm doing right here, are... Okay, now that's interesting. That's interesting. I hit undo, and instead of undoing my last stroke, it deletes the level. It's like, really? How stupid can you be? That's pretty stupid. That's pretty darn stupid. Yeah. I'm sitting here talking about how the fix-ups and the touch-ups are easier working with this raster level, and then something as idiotic as that happened. Well, hey. That's what you get, folks. Alright. Okay, this is supposed to be -2. And I'm going to sample the darker color here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go winky, winky, winky. What I'm curious about is this line. And I think what I want to do is just sample that. So I can tighten that up, sample that. And then, you know, obviously we've got an erroneous line that would have been erroneous in a tune's raster level as well. So anyway, pretty easy to just fix things by painting over them. You know, no big deal. It's quick, it's intuitive, and you're spending most of your time drawing, which I like. I like to keep things close to the metal, if you will. Right here, for example, if I want to touch up this shadow, pretty easy to do. Not the best brush. I probably should be using this one, actually. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So there we go. And what about this stuff? Do we want to be super meticulous? Well, of course we do. Of course we do. So let's just have fun fixing things up, making it look amazing. Okay, now one question that does come to mind is, do we want to put a reflection in his eyes? I think so. Whoa, that might be a little bit, yeah, that might be a little bit strong. Now what's very strange here, I'm going to hit save all because this is actually really strange. Okay, I'm going to close OpenTunes and reopen it because I don't know if you can believe this, in all the time I have used OpenTunes, I have never had occasion to bump into a situation where it appears that raster levels actually have no undo. Now, it could be that raster levels have no undo, and I've just never bumped into that, you know, in almost a year of working with OpenTunes. That's really strange. So, I'm going to kill this. You know, it's funny because you see, it looks like there's another instance of OpenTunes that's open. And I'm going to actually have to kill that through the Windows Task Manager. What's going on there is I made the really. I'm using OpenTunes Experimental, which is a version of OpenTunes Portable built by Jeremy Bullock. It's by far the most stable, feature complete version of OpenTunes I have personally ever used. Now, I made the absolute error about a month ago of listening to people on YouTube and stuff who said, check out the latest version, blah, blah, blah. So I check out the latest version, I install it, and it literally broke things because it's probably putting stuff in the Windows registry and yada, yada, yada. And basically, by uninstalling it, most of it was fixed. So in other words, it was causing problems in the version of OpenTunes that is stable. The latest version of OpenTunes is less stable and feature complete than OpenTunes Experimental. That's a fact. But after I installed it, now whenever I kill OpenTunes, all of a sudden it's like a new instance of OpenTunes. That never used to happen ever until after I installed the latest version. So anyway, one thing that's kind of cool back here in the show is that, to my surprise, it's like really crazy cool, but we're pushing 4 minutes. I mean, we haven't even gotten into the battle yet. and it's not like the show is like really dragging, I mean, it's humming right along. You can see the actions kind of happening. So, I'm happy with the way it's looking. So that's where we're at. Big confrontation with the big boss. Okay, so let's open OpenTunes again. See what happens. Yeah, having no undo in a raster level, that's crazy. Or at least it seems crazy to me. But what do I know? Here we go. Let's find out. Let's go to this, here and here, and let's just test it. Boom, boom, boom. Z. See, now the undo works. So yeah, that was the classic quintessential OpenTunes issue, which is that OpenTunes has the proclivity to burp, and all of a sudden weird things start to happen. That's the bad news. Happens about, if you're using OpenTunes, like if you're just really working and you work for an hour, it's going to happen at least once in that hour. Something weird's going to happen. That's the bad news. The good news is you restart OpenTunes and the problem goes away. And there's no long-term damage from it. So it's, I've used all kinds of commercial software that was just as problematic, so it's not like something to really complain too much about. Okay, now let's get into lip sync. We need to make sure this is a raster level, so boom. Alright, and the nice thing about the raster level is it immediately has the complete palette that I like. Okay, so now what's going on here? Why is that size 9? Okay, so that's another strange thing. Being that these are raster brushes, what's really weird... Okay, it is kind of interesting though. If this was no brush at all, then you would have these options right here, which is typical of a Tunes raster level where you're not using the MyPaint brushes. I am using the MyPaint brushes, but as you can see, this is incorrect. All these options are germane to this default OpenTunes brush, not to all of the MyPaint brushes. Therefore, I'm actually going to do the same thing again. Let's see if it happens again. It didn't this time. We don't have this phantom instance of OpenTunes running in the background. So honestly, this is not a great endorsement of OpenTunes today. Wasn't really having all these issues until you showed up. But again, you know, let's see what happens. I'm gonna hit the B key, and yes, this is correct now. Now we're back to normal, folks. So I think what we want here is -2. Let's just see what this brush looks like. I think that's too thin. So let's go -1. That's probably about right. I would say let's go just slightly darker. Yeah, I still don't like it. I still think we should just go back to 0. Okay. B key. Yeah, that's a little too thick. -0.5. There we go. That's nice. Okay, so, you know, the downside with the tune's raster level is there's no flood fill. And you know what? Who cares? Who cares, man? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to use this for my ink, and I'm going to use the oil paint brush for my, actually no I'm not, I'm going to use this one. Let me see what that looks like shape-wise. Okay, that's not horrible. So what I want to do is take the R key, sample that, and then just make it slightly darker, and let's see if we can, actually no, let's just sample that right there. Alright. Okay, that's not bad. We want to be cognizant of Mr. Big from our other scene. Okay. One thing I do notice here is my lip shadow for Mr. Big is actually a little lighter in the other shot. So, yeah, I'm just going to stay consistent with that. What the heck? So I'm just going to go a little darker here. And this should be, in fact, yeah, that's not dark enough. Just keep going until we like it. We're almost there. We're almost there. There, that's not too bad. Actually, I think my personal preference is just slightly darker. Okay, so that's fine, and I can always cut back into it with the eraser to make it perfect. Okay. Okay, so now one of the lessons I've been learning is that normal speech actually, to my surprise, normal enunciation of consonants is almost always on 4s. So if you know what your phonemes are for speech, you're going to get it pretty darn close by just putting your lip sync on 4s. That just seems to work most of the time. So I'm going to go ahead and try this. B key. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to erase this. And you know, as I said, I'm going to have to paint that in by hand. But again, that's okay. It's got a certain character to it. So he says, I'm sorry. I'm not going to try to enunciate the M. This is the ah in sorry. So he's really saying, I'm sorry. Well, sorry. I'm sorry. Like that. This is going to be an M. So actually, I'm thinking, I'm going to actually give this a shot here. Alright, now here we need to create a new, whoops, wrong brush. Wrong brush there, sir. Okay, and then here we've got to have tight lip. Not quite liking the way I drew that. So I'm going to go to here. And nope, don't like that either. But I still want that key in there. So what I'm showing here is I actually seem to get more enjoyment out of I just draw more mouth shapes. I don't kill myself trying to reuse the same ones over and over that much. This is where he's up to the word precaution. Actually this one I'm going to duplicate. And then I'm going to stretch it. And I'll just tighten that up. I'm basically using that as a guide. Because I am thinking for a couple of these mouth shapes I'm going to put his teeth in there. Okay, I actually don't like that at all. I think what I want to see here is, yes. Okay, that seems like that's going to be too fast, but let's find out. Okay, that's a little fast. Okay, so I'm going to give this one longer. Okay, that's okay. That's probably fine. Okay, so now let's go through and fix them up. What we'll do is we will 1, 2, I'll come back later and put in a little bit of an indication of teeth there. So yeah, you could argue that, geez, this would probably be faster if you were doing flood fills. It would be, but you know what? Who cares? If you are cranking along and you have a leak that wrecks your flood fill, even one time, that one time, just stopping the workflow and searching for the leak and patching it and then redoing the fill is intrusive enough into sort of being in the zone that, for me, for something especially like this with lip sync, I just soon just draw it by hand and call it good. So yeah, we'll come back in here, put in just a little bit of indication of teeth, and then the bottom lip obviously needs to be in there as well. I think that's too much teeth, actually. So yeah, so 60 days is a little aggressive, but yeah, who cares? Let's try. Cool. All right. Save early, save often. Close enough for rock and roll. Okay, so now we've got this brush here. And I think what I'm going to do, is hit Control C. Okay, so clearly that would be well advised. And of course that's going to fix all of those other drawings. Okay, so this is going to definitely be a little touchy. Just because this brush tends to respond fairly aggressively with pressure. So it's no big deal as long as I sort of know what to expect from the brush. I can adjust accordingly. And this one I'm going to go boom, boom, boom. Just use the eraser. I mean, honestly, the whole thing would be faster probably if I went like this. This shows you where sort of an assembly line mentality can pay off a bit. Okay, and then we just go back with the eraser and go boom, boom. I don't mind having the assembly line mentality. It can be quite useful. Boom, boom. I'm basically going from the corners of his mouth as sort of a reference. going in the right direction here. Okay, that one is objectionable. So let's fix it. Could argue that that one maybe should be thicker. But we're not going to belabor it too much. I mean, this stuff goes by pretty fast. Okay. File. Save all. Okay, so now the question becomes, do we want to bother with secondary animation? Generally speaking, I do like to. So let's just go with it and see what we get. So let's create a mesh on this poor guy. And then what we'll do is we'll just feed the mouth into the plastic tool so that we can get keep everything together, I guess you'd say. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go boom, 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 just basically creating these extra nodes to tell the plastic tool that I want to control any motion on these other areas. You can basically shield areas from being deformed by how you use, just adding bones helps you control the mesh deformation. Now I'm actually going to put one freebie right there to see if I can use that to make a slight modification in his jaw. Let's find out. Okay, so we're going to go into animate mode. And now I just want to know, okay, this needs to be keep distance turned off. Let me see what this does. Okay, it's not quite got enough range of influence. So I'm going to go back to build skeleton here. Put this here. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go like this. Boom, 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 boom. Because that's really what I'm trying to animate there. Okay, so that's not horrible, but you can see there's an inappropriate deformation of this node here and then over here. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to fix that, but I'm going to try. And the way I'm going to do that is to put this here to guard that stuff. And then I'm going to actually put a node here. Let's take this and do that. Let's just see what that does. Now we should be able to, oh boy, okay, that's some strange mathematics going on there, folks. That's some strange stuff. Well, there you have it. There is the inherent weakness, and it's a big one, in OpenTune's plastic tool. There is really no scenario where that calculation is making sense. That's just piss poor design in terms of the deformation algorithm. Very bad. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new skeleton, like so. And let's make this one stupidly simple. Let's make this one really simple. We'll go boom, boom, boom. And just the only thing we're going to protect is essentially all that. Okay, so now the only thing we're really going to be able to do is just a slight, turn of the head. And that's fine. That works. Okay, so let me hit Control Z. I am going to keep distance on these. And one thing I do want to do in terms of protection is move these guys right across here like that so that the bottom of this guy isn't getting stretched above Yeah, above the camera boundary. So there you go. That looks fine. And now if I hit F3 in my case, and I say here's the mesh, and what I'm going to do is take column 5, which is my mouth layer, and I'm also going to feed that through the plastic tool. Okay. Now what that does is gives me the ability to deform him just a little bit and have his entire, all the layers work together. Okay, so here again we're using the plastic tool, and the nice thing about this is I can sort of make some judgments. So if he says, I'm sorry, I could maybe do that. It was an unavoidable. Right about there, I'd say there's a little bit of a push with his head. I think that's it. Alright, so now I'm going to hide that layer and hit Control or hit K to rewind. There's only one thing right there. I feel like that needs to be. So let me try that again. Nope. Almost. I want it to be when he says, I assure you. That's where I want to push. Okay, so cool. So now you can see up here on the levels that this level is turned off, but yet it's also visible in preview. And the dialog is the opposite. The dialog is turned on in the high-performing workspace, but it's turned off in the preview. So what that means is when I go to render this thing, the dialog will disappear, and it will be replaced with the background, which is cool. Now, one thing I want to look at. I'm not really totally whippy on the background here, but that's okay. All right, there is one thing we need to consider, however, and that is that in the earlier version, or the earlier shot, we had a shadow situation. So let's go through here and tweak a couple things. Okay, first thing we need to do is, okay, so there's a catch. The catch is if you go through the plastic tool, you can no longer edit your painting. You can do it in the channel strip, but you can't do it in the X sheet. So I have to do what I just did, which is disconnect from the plastic tool in order to make these mods that I'm about to make, because obviously we don't really want this. This seems to be, you would think this has maybe got to do with some sort of pre-multiplication issue, but I checked the level settings. I've seen this before, and I checked the level settings, and it's already been pre-multiplied, so it's not going to do any good to, you can't pre-multiply it twice. So why we're getting this strangeness around the edge with the, you might say, with the alpha channel, I'm not really sure. I would say actually up here we're going to do better to zip in here and just paint over this. So I'm going to hit the R key, and we're just going to give this guy a little bit clearer. Now a little bit of that edge isn't bad, actually. I mean, because it does help delineate where his hairline is. But basically, it's not really the most desirable thing ever, right? So, yeah, a little fix-up, no big deal. Little fix-up, no big deal. Okay. So now, while I'm here, I'll go ahead and make a few other helpful tweaks like that and that. And let's go to full size. That's not too bad. What I want to look at is in Blender. Okay, so the shadow's basically cutting across right here. So let's just get that in there like that. Okay, now what about his body? Not much. Basically the shadowing there is fine. So what I'm going to do is go like this and fill that so that I can then crank the alpha down on that kind of a lot. And what we want to do is not feed that through the plastic tool. That way when he moves his head will actually slide under the shadow, which is kind of cool. So you get a little bit of extra production value that way. Yes, you do. And then what I'm going to probably do is put a little bit of a glow behind the guy. So F3, what I want to do is feed my character back into, yeah, see, there we go. That looks pretty good. So now the thing I want to do for no apparent reason is experiment once with putting a glow behind my character. So I'm going to hit the B key, and what I'm going to do actually is just go to my trusty airbrush. And just put a little bit of a glow. Now, one could argue that that glow should actually be in front of our friend. Maybe. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it through the whole shot very faintly. I think that's it. Okay, and now I want to do the same thing in front of him, believe it or not. Alright, so I'm going to take the airbrush again, but now I'm going to set the airbrush's size to real small. Like so. And now I'm going to set it to -2. Okay. Change that color to white with just a little bit of a blue tint, because we do have, this is basically moonlight coming in from outside. So the reason I'm doing it this way is, if you're going to do the glow thing, technically it bleeds around the character a bit. So this glow, what if we make this a little stronger? But actually, let's do this. Let's sample the background color. Okay. But then create a lighter version of it. Like so. And then crank down the alpha from there. So we've got this sort of a brown thing coming from the background, but a blue thing coming from the foreground. I don't know. I'm just making this up as I go along, but it's fun to just try different things. I think that will work. Last time checking this one. Frankly, the glow behind him seems more compelling and interesting. So let's go ahead and stretch this down to the bottom of the scene. I think I fed my guy back through the plastic tool again. Don't remember right now if I did or not. I'm going to go with this. And let's have a look. Actually, let's hit Control R. So we render the whole thing out. Feels like the glow in front is too strong. I'm getting a little bit enamored of my effects. It's got to be real subtle. Let's see if we turn it off completely. Yeah, I do want something there. Yeah, it's got to be really subtle. Okay. So let's hit Control R so it does a fast render. And let's hit the L key and play this baby back. Yeah. The only thing I would qualify that I would say needs to be tweaked, improved, whatever, let me double check it here, yeah, is we need some shadow action on the collar. So right here, again, we're going to go to the, believe the raster brush that we used. I don't know, but I think it was the one that I already have. So I'm going to hit the B key. Oh, that's right. I was using a standard. Okay, I think I want this then. Control Z. Let's make this 0, which is 0 really means neutral, which means default sizing. Why the heck? That doesn't seem like that's getting big enough, baby. Now, as an added bonus, because the other shadows were baked into the shot to begin with, that means we sort of have an extra shadow layer, if you will. Let me see what this was in the edit. I mean, you really didn't have that there. I'm going to be a little bit careful not to get too crazy with the new stuff. Nope, I don't like that one. Nope. There we go. That's good. Render that. Save early, save often, and render. %. Okay, that's 101. Looks satisfactory. And so with that, we can hit this, and what we will do is render this into our render folder. L, anime, a render. Let's go to the bottom here. This is going to be shot 59. Boom, boom. And happily, FFmpeg accommodates us by rendering it out to a nice high quality MP4, and then we'll be able to drag it into here. So that's it. How long did that take? We'll push an hour. So an hour to knock out a shot. Not too bad. I'm sure there will be more later, as there always